And so the topic we're going to cover right now is about how to build a team. But I first want you to, everybody, first go into the participants section, and then there is a button that says more. Push that, and I want to see thumbs up thinking that you should build a team, and thumbs down if you think it's better to go solo. So can everybody vote? We have some that haven't. So let me just, because you're on top of this, Elaine Saldama, because you're at the top of my alpha list, could you unmute yourself and tell me why you think you voted it's important to have a team?
I think it's just nice to have people to bounce ideas off of and correct your mistakes. I guess more minds is not a bad thing until you have like too many cooks in the kitchen. But for the most part, it's nice to have other people to talk to, interact with, bounce ideas off of.
Okay, Faith, why did you vote yes?
I voted yes. Sorry, did you say Faith or Jake?
Faith.
Okay.
Yep, you.
I voted yes because I think it's a really healthy way to expand your ways of thinking and maybe, I don't know, someone else might bring something up that could then lead to circumventing a problem, or maybe bring a problem to light that you might not have thought about. And it's a great way to collaborate with other people. So that way the responsibility, while it may be your idea, doesn't necessarily all of the responsibility falls directly on your shoulders, if that makes sense.
Okay, so ordinarily I would ask somebody who voted no, but nobody voted no, so we're going to move on, and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to kind of go through, and we'll elaborate more on this this topic in there. So just so you know, this presentation will also be available. Allison, in addition to the recording, will also have in the archives, this presentation will be available. So the first question I just asked you, everybody, usually I do this in person, I get to see hands go up. But so I think the common thinking is everybody will say is do form a team. Because look at sort of the basic structure of once you get up and running, past doing customer discovery. And if there's no team, that's all you. So it's just too much to do. And I've had a few that have gone, they have been mostly the founder and they did have some help, but it goes much slower. Investors look strongly for the team. And I think both of you brought up the fact you need various expertise, people to bounce things off of, as well as it just helps keeping momentum, because startups are hard and you're going to find at one point you're going to get discouraged, but your co-founder is going to say, you know, okay, we can get over this, we can get beyond it. Plus, they have data that shows that 60% of successful startups have 2 to 3 founders. That seems to be the best number. They raise more money, they grow faster, they actually survive at a higher rate. And as you said, it's a better experience because you share the stress, the effort. And but they're the challenges of shared decision making. So it's important that you choose well. So terminology here, co-founders. This is the individual, and I'm going to define what the founders do. But you have contractors versus employees versus interns, because these things get confused. Advisors, board of directors, and service providers and partners. So what does a founder do? Their responsibilities are broad and deep. They literally develop the roadmap for the company as well as the product, and sort of make the overall decisions. They make the decisions to change, as well as when they need to pivot. And a big thing too is about raising the funding. So I just want to point out that on Wednesday, we're going to be talking about the biggest reason why startups fail, which is no market need. But the third largest reason is not the right team. And it's either the wrong people or literally discord amongst the founding team. So what I'm going to be doing here is talking a little bit more about how to try to avoid that if you can. So when you're looking, what do you look for? Obviously skills. You want to look for people who have some networks that they can tap into in areas of expertise of what you're looking for. So for example, Nikhil was talking about the Amazon experience. And so maybe somebody who's been a seller on Amazon, that would be something that would be helpful, or knows people who have done that. Personal, this is really important. They share your values and your ethics, and they're personally committed to this, and having that good discussion about what the company should be. So good founders disagree agreeably, meaning that you're not, the whole point is you don't know if you're necessarily right at this point, because this is all high risk and unknown. But what you want to do is make sure that not that you're right, but that you're doing the right. I had a team. They were three, two Tepper MBAs, and one was the tech guy, and they applied to Alpha Lab. And the head of Alpha Lab contacted me again. He said, "What is with this team? Do they fight and argue all the time?" And I said, "Jim, you have to listen carefully. Yeah, they do. But it's not about being right. It's trying to figure out what's right. So somebody will answer a question a certain way and they'll attack it. And say, what about this, or how about that? And then after they've gone through that discussion, then it's fine. They've kind of quickly go through it. Their mistake was maybe doing it in public, in front of everybody, but they were fighting not to be right, but to find the right answer. So, and it will happen. And can you have these without taking it personally, or without getting, getting nasty? I have to tell you, I've been through a lot of founder marriages where people have found co-founders through connects, literally this process. But I've also had founder divorces where actually in one case I was in court as they were trying to decide the fate of the company. So this is why it's sort of like marriage. You got to pick carefully. And big debate on this about whether you should go for partners or friends. Excuse me, look for friends. And we have one team, Oryx Brewery. They went to high school together. They know each other really well. And as Ryan will say, we share the same values, and they're doing great. Whereas the partnership where I ended up in court testifying for one side, they were also high school buddies that had worked on projects before. So I can't give you a definitive answer, but just because they're a friend does not necessarily mean that they'll be a good co-founder. So one of the best suggestions you could do early on, and this is the ones that ended up in court did not do, is a founder's agreement. And you can see what the qualifications are there. How are you going to own it? What's going to happen if one of the partners wants to leave? Do this as soon as possible. You can even do it by email. But it's a good way of exploring how you both feel about the company and what some of the principles will be. Ultimately, this will lead to an operating agreement or bylaws, but it's good to have it before you actually do any kind of formal legal incorporation. And we can help you with this, by the way. So there's sort of a checklist of different things you ought to talk about. So founders versus early employees. So the founders, by the way, legally, founders are employees. So legally, there's no distinction. But as terms of how the company is run, the founders are the ones who literally own the business and make all the big decisions. Early employees, as it says there, they get larger options because they're taking more risk at an earlier stage, and it gives them more reward at the potential. And so the employee can influence, certainly, but is not making the decision. So we will have a workshop, Start Smart Legal series on this too, whether they're an employee or not. For those of you who have been watching the Uber lawsuit about what defines an employee, and there are very specific rules and requirements if it is formally an employee. So what we recommend, though, is what you do is if you're going to get anybody to work with you, start out with a contractor. So this is a person who you're going to have very specifically what you want this person to do. They're going to invoice you if you're paying, but they're not an employee because you want to avoid setting up payroll, payroll taxes, Social Security, and all that. There is specific something that they should sign, that whatever work they do for you, that you will own. You'll have a non-disclosure and a non-compete. And this is a standard legal document which we have that you can just modify for when you get around to it. But just about everybody does this in the beginning because one of my startups, he was a CPA, and he's been through 3 startups, and he said, I never do my own payroll. It's just too complicated. And frankly, I've had the IRS show up at Olympus looking for some companies that were not doing their tax withholding and reporting correctly. So, and plus an added benefit, it's much easier to hire and fire. So this is a way you can test drive these people. So you're going to, along the way, really, really good startups find people who can advise them. They have deep expertise in different subject matter. And advisor is just sort of a one-off that you can contact on an as-needed basis. You might need them in the beginning, but then after you get past that patch, you don't need them as much anymore. They have no legal responsibility. They're just there to help you. They are not paid. And if you ask somebody for advice and they ask you how much equity they're going to get right off the top, that's not what you're looking for, and just thank them very much and move on. But there will be some people that you will continually tap into time and time again. And they who will give you advice on a regular basis that are following you and your company through. And so you don't have to brief them every time. And having a strong advisory team when you get around to getting investment will make your investors a lot more comfortable that you have some gray hair, as it were, experience that is advising you. But advisors, per se, have no fiduciary responsibility. And I'm bringing this up because ultimately, okay, let me do this first. So one of the techniques that we teach is how to keep your advisors informed and engaged. So in the beginning, you're going to find you're going to meet, as it were, or Zoom one-on-one. But that gets time consuming as the number of advisors you have keeps getting larger. So what I recommend is it's just a real simple email, maybe 2 or 3 bullet points about here's a quick update. And then you can have some asks. We're looking somebody who in this company, or somebody who has this type of experience. And you'd be surprised. The master of this is one of our startups named Andy Chan. He's with VIT. And he started doing this very shortly after he started his company. And Andy is really good about recruiting advisors, and they want to help Andy. So they actually volunteer their time. So he sends around this update, and if we were at another time, another place, or we were together, I would just pull it up, and he's on like update number 62. And there was one time when he was looking for a contact, and he was not at that time BCCing the contact list. And within less than an hour, he had like 14 responses of people who had ways that they could help him based upon what his ask was. So what you do is when you meet someone and say, I'm going to send out periodic updates, they'll be real short or something, would you mind being on the list? And you can come off at any time. And just about everybody, well, most people will say yes, but if they say no, then you have a good sense of how available they're going to be. So again, advisors are there to give you advice, and I will just tell you, I get this from people coming back that are in, for example, Alpha Lab or Alpha Lab Gear, and they come and say, Kit, I've got one advisor's telling me to go left, and I got another advisor's telling me to go right. And I'm thinking, my team, we think we should be going down the middle. What do I do? And there literally is a term for this. It's called advisor whiplash, with right and left. So the trick to doing this is you can say, boy, you're telling me to go left, and I was thinking I should go down the middle. Can you tell me more? And then just ask questions. Don't argue, because then you'll get the reputation for being uncoachable. But then you'll find out how strongly held that conviction is about going left. You'll find what the assumptions are if you're asking the right questions about why you should go left. And then, so then you have a more in-depth knowledge to make your decision. And at the end, just thank them very much, because everybody's trying to help you. And then do what you think is best. It's your company. But again, just thank them and move on. So service providers. These are eventually you're going to have accountants, attorneys, maybe some product development experience or whatever. But they are not employees, and they also should not generally be board members. And lastly, though, is the board of directors. So this is a legal responsibility if they're on your board to do what's right for the company, not necessarily you. And so sometimes the best decision for the company is to get another CEO. So just be aware that boards can hire and fire you. So again, pick well. This is including when somebody invests in you, they often get a board seat. So think carefully about the relationship with that person. Just best advice, though, is also keep your board small, because ultimately you're going to have to manage it. So really effective board members help with raising the funds in addition to helping you with the strategic activities. So this is sort of I just went through the team and where they, what their general responsibilities are and what you're looking for. So the next half I'm going to do is spending time on where to find these team members and how to recruit them. But before I do, I'm just going to pause and just see if we have any questions. Allison, if you do, you can just put it in chat, and I'll just literally give it 30 seconds if you want to type something in and ask. Okay, something else shows up. Okay, so where do you find them? So Wednesday, we're going to talk about customer discovery interviews, and this is when you actually go out to the, to validate whether your idea is a good one or not. The connects, you heard the start of the process. You'll hear this before every single connects. That's why we call it the connects. And that team that I was describing, the ones that argued so much and then settled down, their name was Black Locust, but they found each other through these connects, and which, by the way, they went on, had a successful exit to Home Depot. So good things can come from it. And you're going to see a repeated theme in here: check the bulletin, check the bulletin, check the bulletin, because even though it's harder or a little different, that it's meeting people, ultimately it's your network. So you will hear a lot of us say that it's ultimately not what you know, it's who you know. And college is one of the best times to develop that network, and so that you can tap into people with different experience now as well as when they graduate. So in the bulletin, we have other CMU events, other events on campuses, off campus, that fortunately, that Pittsburgh has a very, very rich entrepreneurial community. We have lots of universities here, 5 within like 3 miles between University of Pittsburgh, Chatham, Duquesne, and Carlow. And there's lots of very talented people that you can recruit from. They have a lot of activities that we do together. For example, University of Pittsburgh, we have like 3 events coming up, which is a joint effort. Meet them in your classes. And let's just say that you're the business person and you're looking for somebody who's got some coding experience or they know AI or robotics. Find the professor that is teaching that class and say, can I come in front of your class for like a 3-minute pitch and just see if there's anybody who wants to meet. So Handshake is the official site where larger corporations publish what they're looking for to hire. But also we tell all our startups, but if you're looking for a co-founder, you're looking for a teammate, you're looking for somebody to do a project, post it there. That should be the initial go-to place. Let everybody know it's that 2 degrees, 3 degrees of separation. Entrepreneur clubs, we have 2 active, Global Entrepreneurship Club, the UEA, which is for the undergraduate. We're having a startup job fair. It's actually going to be the 2 Thursdays before Thanksgiving. We needed to move it because of a lot of school schedules have changed. And so, but bottom line, it's network, reaching out to folks. So this is a shot from when we were doing our startup job fair in person. We had up to 40 startups, all were under 5 years old, looking for part-time, full-time, paid, unpaid project work, Newell Simon Hall Atrium. We're planning a virtual one this year, and we have been doing this with Pitt for, I think, 4 or 5 years. So we get a really good turnout. So here's some common questions and the answers. When you're talking to somebody about your idea, should you get an NDA or a non-compete? No. They're just not necessary at this stage. What we say is you've got to learn to talk about your idea without giving away the secret sauce. And I have been doing this since, I think, 2007 or 8. I have not had anybody ever steal anybody's idea. They get more excited about their own. And you're at this level, such a high level in the concept, that there's not enough there for somebody to steal much of anything. So the idea is the 1% inspiration, the rest is the 99% perspiration, which is all just work. So you found somebody, you have the proverbial cup of coffee with somebody, and you think they're interesting, they may be willing to help. What do I look for? How do I know it's a good fit? So you're going to see this again and again. It's the equivalent of date before you marry. Nobody is going to go out on a first date and get married. Well, most people don't. So a really good thing for a founder to do is pick a project that needs to be done that is not a huge one, but it is something that will give you a little bit of an indication of what their capabilities are. Set a time frame and say, well, can you get it done? When can you get this done by? And what are you actually going to see? And then evaluate, how did that work out? So can they do it? Did they have the talent or the skills? Did they do it? So if you kind of keep getting excuses about, or reasons, they say, well, I had a class deadline, I had a paper due, I didn't quite get it done, then that's a little bit of a red flag. You want to see about, did they say, well, you asked me to do this, but I had this idea because I was reading about this coming up, and maybe we should also look at this. So they're actually bringing something to the table. They're showing engagement. They're showing enthusiasm, and actually helping to develop the idea. So you're looking for that type of what I call leaning in, and how did you agree or disagree? Was it amiable? Did you actually then go kind of back and forth and trying to find the right thing? So it's just like dating. So after you have that cup of coffee or that project, would you want to have a second date or a third one? So the old saying is this, that hire slowly, fire quickly. So take your time on this, because if you don't get this right, it's, as I said, going through founder divorces is painful. So somebody asked you about, when you're having the conversation, if they could be a co-founder. So first of all, I would say date before you marry still applies. And what you can say is, well, co-founder status may be available for the right fit, but we haven't worked together. We don't really know each other. You know, we are just exploring the idea. So let's spend some time getting to know each other and learning about the idea. And same thing, pick a project needs to be done, agree on the time frame and deliverables, and same question, how did that work out? So what I suggest sometimes, because co-founders get equity in the company, that if they're working on the project and at the end of the project, let's just say it took a month, if you then decide that this would be a great co-founder, you can backdate the vesting on the applying that equity to the time when they started working on the project. So you'll hear this if you're not, that if whatever equity you decide each will get, nobody gets it right away. You earn it over 3 or 4 years, and that's called vesting. So it's a protection, and we have other seminars, workshops, and connects that deal with that. So you can learn more here, but I don't want to go into there. So handling equity, here we are. It doesn't have to be equally divided. In fact, one of the big mistakes, let's just say you have a co-founder right now and say, well, we're going to do 50-50. There is a connects as well as some resources, and it's called Founders Pie, which talks about it's a tool to help you figure out how much equity people should get. And it's a great discussion. It's a great tool to use. And frankly, I found on occasion, the teams that didn't even get past making those equity decisions. And I said, well, it's a good thing to find out now, as opposed to starting up the company and then finding out on something as simple as deciding on the equity that you couldn't even get it right there. Careful about giving equity to one-timers. And what I mean by that, let's just say your startup idea requires that a website or an app needs to be written. But once that website is set up, or once the app is written, you don't need, that person will just move on. They're not a critical part of the team. You usually don't have cash right now, so you think, oh, I can just give them equity. But you don't want equity residing in somebody who's not going to be working with your company on and on, because investors don't like that. And it's really hard once you give it to get it back. Okay. So I want to bring other students on the team, but one of them is just going to be doing a logo design, whereas somebody else is going to be actually, writing the back end for something. What are my choices to offer them? So obviously, we just talked about equity, and by the way, we have some guidelines that can give you about what's a reasonable amount of equity to give for various types of things for people with different roles. Sometimes cash, and you can do it immediate or deferred. You say if you actually have some cash, you can give somebody. Those are usually the ones that are most happy that you don't have to deal with this ownership. But we've had one project where, and I've had a few where what they'll say is, when I get my first investment of over $25,000, then I'll write you a check for $1,000 to pay you for what you did. Now they're taking risk that you may never get that investment. On the other hand, that sometimes works for them because they're going to get more than if they had just been paid by the hour. So many people just want the experience. They want to be able to put this on their resume. One of our startups, he was an undergraduate. He had a startup, didn't go particularly anywhere. He ended up graduating, he went out to Silicon Valley and started to work for one of the big tech companies out there. And when he followed up with me later, and he said, when I got hired, I found out I was offered $10,000 more than my roommate, who also started the same company at the same time. And he found out it's because he had startup experience on his resume, because it shows people who are willing to take a bit of risk. It shows people who have learned how to innovate and they tried something, and companies are looking for that. You can, if you have to go talk to your advisor, but it's possible sometimes that you can do an independent study and you can get academic credit. Somebody can get academic credit for the work that they're doing. And ultimately in there, it comes, you can also, they get it for references that you can testify that they were really good at working with the company, easy to work with, good team player, meets the deadlines. So let's just say you bring somebody on. This just goes for anybody who does any work from you. Do you need them to sign anything? And the answer is yes. And that whatever they do, the work they do, that they transfer the ownership of that intellectual property that was created. You own that. They cannot go around telling people the in-depth thing of what you're doing. They can give, that real high level in there, but the non-compete. And we have these standard forms, by the way, legal documents that you can tailor. They're written by lawyers, and we just strip out the company names, and then you just put in yours. So if you're here on an F1 visa, we do have had some startups that successfully, for students who are here on an F1 visa, or people who have gone to work for a startup that are on an F1 visa. And it is possible that you could do this work under, it's called CPT, Curricular Practical Training, and when you graduate under OPT. But you need to go see the Office of International Education and clarify exactly what your visa and your curriculum permits. And note that F1 students generally cannot be paid. They don't have a work permit. But some of them do it for their experience, as long as it's related to their degree. So we have a Start Smart that we do usually around January, and it's called Starting a Business with an F1 Visa, which also applies that if you just not want to start one, you just want to work for one. We're also going to be another one in this spring on then hiring and firing. And so this is the one that deals with employees and what the difference is and what the legal requirements are. So once you get past founders, this is the legal stuff you have to pay attention to. Unpaid interns. So we use the term interns as just somebody who wants to come in and do it on a project basis. In a legal definition, an intern, we're kind of below the radar screen, but it's Department of Labor says that the work of the intern is not for your benefit, it's for the benefit of the intern. And they have to be, they're not doing it instead of having a regular paid employee. Pay attention, number 4, you're supposedly not replying and deriving any immediate advantage. And this is because there was a big case that was called Runway, where they were hiring interns that were doing this whole work, and they were producing the show, and Runway got sued because they were in violation of it. So maybe you can come up with a different term besides intern. You can just say project position. So recognize hiring mistakes are very expensive. And if you've got the wrong person on the team, that you can feel the tension, it just puts everybody on edge. But get rid of bad employees quickly. And the advice from most of our startups is that referrals are often the best candidate. So use your network. So also understand the candidate's motivation. So you're better off if you find somebody, and this is also for you doing your startup. If you're doing this to get rich, you might want to go in a different direction. What you really want to be inspired that you've got a solution that can change the world. So this sounds kind of iffy. Obviously, if you go too fast, you might have to lay people off, and that's happened before. If you get some money and you think that there's going to be a next round of funding or that you're going to have some sales. But if you go too slow, then it takes too long to get things done, and people are working super overtime. So know too that over time, your needs will change. For example, in the beginning, nobody hires a chief financial officer. What you can do is you can get some people to help you out part-time to do that. But after you get your first seed round or Series A, then you're probably going to need a CPA, excuse me, a CFO, but not in the beginning. Onboarding new employees, you need to have your agreement in place. And if you're thinking about applying for an H-1B visa status for one of your employees, recognize that it is costly. The employer must pay the $2,500 application fee, which has no guarantees, every year, and that the founders are generally not available for H-1Bs. The biggest requirement is that you need to be paid going rates. So working for equity is not optional. You literally need to have a paycheck. We call it a W-2. Then at prevailing wage, and maybe if you're highly technical, that could be $80,000, and most people don't have that. So again, we'll be having the starting a business with an F1 visa with our immigration attorneys, as well as the Office of International Education, and on the Project Olympus website under Entrepreneurial Resources, Office Hour Experts, there's a whole section for immigration attorneys that'll kind of explain to you what's involved and give you an idea of what a path going forward. So on that note, I'm just going to stop and ask for questions again. And since I might stop sharing my screen, but if anybody has one, just maybe you can just unmute yourself and ask.
And Kit, we have 2 questions in the chat.
Okay, good.
One is from Luke. What's the difference between an advisor and paying a consultant?
Well, an advisor is just that, somebody who gives you advice for free. A consultant usually is giving you advice for a fee. Did I get the question right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it could be somebody who does consulting, but they're willing to serve as an advisor for free. So it's just the difference is, are you paying the consultant to do something? Do you actually have a written contract that the consultant's going to deliver something for you at a certain price?
And then the last question from the chat so far is from Elariza. For the investors of an IP that is a startup is licensing, what is the best option, equity or royalty?
Say that again.
For the investors of an IP that a startup is licensing, what is the best option, equity or royalty?
Or the investors or the inventors?
Inventors, sorry.
Okay, all right. It's a choice. So the way it generally works when you have developed something to your research and you file the first round, is called a disclosure, which is the first step toward getting a patent. And the question you will be asked by our tech transfer office is, are you planning to license this into a company that you're going to start? Or do you want CMU to manage the intellectual property that if we license it to somebody else, that you will get a royalty? So I would say the decision is not so much based upon money. It could be as opposed to whether you actually want to be involved in the company. But I will tell you, you can't double dip. You either get the royalty if CMU license it out and not to your own company, or you can get the potential very high upside of creating a company which you own more equity, but ultimately that IP makes it a high value. So that was Alarisa?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that more because we have some examples sometimes, as you can see. It's um, often what the faculty will do is choose not to take any equity in the company, but they will then just go with the royalty on the side. And it depends on whether you have an exclusive or non-exclusive license. So,
Right. Thank you.
okay.
And one more question from the chat. Should we file a patent for the product before building the team?
Startup stuff is not necessarily serial. So it takes a long time to get a patent. So usually the first step is you file for what's called a provisional. And this is not expensive. It's anywhere from 100 to 125 bucks. And you file it with the US Patent Office. But what it is, it's a placeholder. And you have 1 year to decide whether you're going to go ahead and apply for the full patent, which I think $10,000 and on up, depending. And so I would say build your team and first file a provisional patent if you have something that's patentable. Build your team. You have a whole year to explore the financial viability of the company and whether your IP is going to be of value. And so that's a year of research, and then you could decide whether you go ahead and proceed on the full patent process. Okay, so now I'm going to try again. So let me just tell you how the best way to do this on these connects. Start out and say, hello, my name is Kit. I have an idea to solve the problem of students and faculty who have lots of good ideas, but they don't really know how to explore the commercial potential of the idea. If anybody would be interested in just talking with me about coming up with a company that would do that, again, my name is Kit. I'll put my email in the chat room, and please follow up and we can just have the proverbial cup of coffee and talk about it further. So what I say is say your name in the beginning, because that's and you can say it's Kit and I'm staff here at CMU and work in the Swartz Center, or I'm a PhD in material science, or I'm an undergrad specialized in electrical and mechanical engineering. And then just state 1 or 2 sentences sort of about the area that you're interested in talking about, and then finish up with your name again. Because nobody listens to your name in the beginning until they know whether this is something they're interested in. But you should think about it in advance often. But for today, just because we're introducing this, does anybody need any help or want to talk to anybody about anything involved in your startup idea? Does anybody here want to become part of a startup but doesn't have an idea? And you could just say what your background is and what your areas of interest. So it works both ways. So Luke, you got your hand raised. Do you want to give it a go? Okay.
So my name is Luke Lyle. I'm an innovation fellow through the Swartz Center, but I work in the material science department. And so we're in the process of developing intellectual property to grow a material that supersedes silicon in a lot of electronic applications. And so we're effectively developing a novel growth process for this material called gallium oxide. And so if anyone's interested in talking to me, once again, my name is Luke Lyle. I will put my email in the chat. And like I said, if anyone wants to reach out, feel free.
Thank you, Luke. That was nicely done. Anybody else here? So all I can tell you, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you can't be shy. And so think about this. So in the connects, you can also do, if you're looking for team members or having somebody just to talk to, if you're looking to join a team, if you have any announcements or if you need anything. And these events, we have what? Do we have 4 connects this week, Allison? Yeah. So I
Yeah.
know that I forget what's tomorrow. I know Wednesday is another one that I'm doing. It's about, is my idea a good one? The very first step of figuring out whether this is going to be how the process, the methodology for exploring whether this is good potential. What's Tuesday and what's Thursday?
Tuesday is exploring the 4 types of entrepreneurship with Lori Barkman. And then Thursday is building business model canvas with Will Kegler.
Okay, so that's a tool for sort of helping you think about the overall picture. We have a Start Smart on, they're in the evening from 5 to 6:30. And it is, this one's very informal. We just sort of kick it off. And David Lehman, who is going to be leading it, will just talk about some general issues. But we also have Reed McManigal, who works in our tech transfer office. And he knows all about the CMU policies. And he's can give you more answers about intellectual property issues in particular, but the legal issues surrounding that. So we're going to start off at sort of informal with some general startup law stuff that you should know, and then just any question you have, throw it out and we'll cover it. So that's from 5 to 6:30 tomorrow night. And Allison, anything else going on this week?
Hey, Kit, I have one question for you.
Okay.
So, because startups are limited on money, what is your recommendation for having lawyers and CPAs to do legal work and to do accounting for the business?
Okay. So at the stage you're in, for the most part, it's just sort of an idea. So most of the time you need money because if, let's just say you've graduated, but while you're in school, you still have, you know where your room and board's going to come from and your just general expenses. You've thought that through. So what we suggest is that you can do a lot of the legwork, which has almost no cost in the beginning, to decide whether you even want to form a company. And we do have people to decide that. So what we're trying to do for the most part is we're like incubators where the idea hatches, and what we're looking for is, while you're still in school, is to find that product market fit, and to the point where you can get funding or win contests or actually have revenue. So I've had all 3 get that while they're still in school. But there's a fine line between when you actually need to form the company, and how much it'll cost. So and CPAs, trust me, in the beginning, if you have no money, there's not much to manage. It's just an Excel spreadsheet. So most of the time, the founders do that on their own.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I would say the biggest thing is looking for teammates right now, and looking for maybe for advisors is probably where I would put more the priority.
So you were talking about, I think one person in the chat had a question about advisors. At Carnegie Mellon, are there any advisors? Would you just go to, are there any advisors at Carnegie Mellon as a resource?
Yeah. So you can approach either Allison or me. That when we sit down and work with you, like just say that you start off with, you work with Olympus, you fill out a business concept template. Applying for Swartz Center, there's also an application. And what you will do, you'll be assigned an entrepreneur in residence, an EIR, who will sit down and actually develop a personalized roadmap depending on what your idea is about and the stage you're in. And often we will make introductions, the first couple introductions for you. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work right now, but ordinarily what we would suggest that you attend, like there's an organization called the Pittsburgh Entrepreneur Forum, which are all these people that want to help startups. And you learn to actually do, we have a version of the Connects pitch at those events. There's the Thai Pittsburgh, which is, again, that's what they do, is they help startups. You would go to events over at Alpha Lab and Alpha Lab Gear, and you'll have to learn to make that little pitch again too, and that's where those advisors are. We also have on the Olympus website, there's a section called Office Hours Experts, and we have over 100 experts in 35 different fields that have already signed up to give you half-hour advice, and they often will go way beyond that, but we just say it's easier to recruit them and say you're only signing up for 1/2 hour. But they know people, and they will introduce you. So every time you should talk to somebody, you should say, well, who else should I talk to, and ask for 3 more names. You learn the art of doing this, the methodology.